Well, thank you, Dr. Craig, for that review of the Shelley debate. I have a few reviews of your books coming up. Thank you very much for coming to this debate, as the topic is one of great importance to Christians around the world. And let me thank Dr. Craig for coming all the way from his home state to debate at Iowa State University. Actually, this debate is a continuation of an impromptu debate we had November 18, 1990. I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
Dr. Craig, in a hotel room in New Orleans. And I think there, in a few minutes, we got to chat about it. It was very nice. And Dr. Craig, of course, has debated this topic a number of times with very important scholars. And as he noted, after his debate with the more famous Dr. Crossan, Dr. Craig wants specifics in debates. In fact, he complained about it. I don't know why he's complaining about the Shelley debate, because that's what he wants, Dr. Craig. He says, it is a remarkable feature of the debate that neither Dr. Crossan nor any of the respondents offer any refutation of the specific evidence. So that's what I was doing with the Shelley debate, and I disagree with you. He was wrong about the manuscript being complete or not. But be that as it may, I can tell you right now, Dr. Craig, that I very much lament that you were not offered specifics. And I'm here to tell you that I'm not going to disappoint you in this regard. In fact, I aim to be very specific in my challenges and questions to you. I certainly don't want you to leave our good university dissatisfied because no specific challenges were offered to you by an ISU professor. That would not be good with the provost, the dean. And as perhaps many of you know, I used to be on Dr. Craig's side. I used to be a fundamentalist preacher, Pentecostal preacher. Not only preached the resurrection, I thought I had seen people coming back from the dead in my own church. So I know that legends don't take these two generations he keeps talking about, Sherwin White and so forth. Not true. I stopped believing in the resurrection after a systematic scholarly study and investigation of the specific evidence showed how empty and illusionary this belief is. I had to admit that what I was really doing instead of history was good old-fashioned religious prejudice, where I was saying my sacred story is true, that of everybody else's is not true. And let me tell you that this debate is really not going to be about naturalism versus supernaturalism. The question of this debate was this, as Dr. Tuckness read it: is there sufficient historical evidence to establish that Jesus resurrected from the dead? My basic position is no. There is not sufficient historical evidence to establish that Jesus resurrected from the dead. This is not a debate about naturalism versus supernaturalism, which he's tried to do in many debates. That's his pattern. One can believe in the supernatural and still not believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Many non-Christian religions believe in the supernatural, do not believe in the resurrection of Jesus. Second, Dr. Craig is actually quite the naturalist himself. I would say he's one of the most relativistic naturalists I've ever encountered, because he takes supernatural as historical when it's his story. He takes as natural and uses naturalistic explanations whenever it's somebody else's story. Yes, there are two Dr. Craigs, the naturalist and the supernaturalist. He's a naturalist when it comes to Buddhist stories, Hindu stories, Muslim stories. He'll apply naturalistic methods to that. But when it comes to 1 Corinthians 15, Mark 16, Matthew 28, well, he's a supernaturalist. That's historical, you see. So, this is what I aim to demonstrate. Some of the main facts on which Dr. Craig bases his belief in the history of the resurrection are no such thing. He just cataloged a bunch of facts that are not facts. 2, many of his facts can indeed be shown to be false or not grounded in any substance whatsoever. And number 3, Dr. Craig's so-called criteria, this McCullough person he keeps talking about, whose criteria are completely bogus once you start applying them. For judging the historicity of the resurrection can be used to establish the historicity of events he would otherwise deem to be false or non-historical. And we're going to have a little test to see whether he can tell historical from non-historical in his own Bible. Because you might not know, he doesn't necessarily believe in every resurrection story in his own Bible. But let me tell you about my basic epistemology. I have a very high standard for calling something a fact. To me, a fact, if you presuppose that your natural senses and or logic give you reliable data, a fact is only what I have verified with my 5 senses and or logic. This podium is here. If you tell me there's a podium out there, I don't know. I can't call that a fact. I haven't verified it directly. It might be a belief, and I make distinctions between 2 kinds of belief. Reasonable beliefs are based on known causes and phenomena, things that I know happen. Unreasonable beliefs are those that are based on unknown causes and phenomena, things I don't know happen. And I usually illustrate this with my famous baby on the doorstep example, which every student of mine knows. And here it is. You open the door and you find a baby on the doorstep. Didn't see who put it there. Just opened the door and there it was. And you're given 2 explanations. One is, the baby was produced on the doorstep by human beings. The baby was produced by human beings, placed on the doorstep by human beings. Another explanation is, the baby's body was created instantaneously by undetectable Martians. Now, which explanation do you think is the more reasonable one? Well, usually my students would say, well, Dr. Avalos is number 1. Of course, you know, the baby was produced by human beings, placed on the doorstep by human beings. When I ask them, well, why did you make that selection? You know, they can't articulate quite why they make the selection. But there is a principle there that undergirds all of history and all of science. And notice, please, the selection is not based on possibility. It is perfectly possible that undetectable Martians exist and they put babies on doorsteps. Sometimes he likes to make in his debates, you know, the debate about the possibility of miracles. It's not about the possibility of miracles. It's perfectly possible that undetectable Martians exist. By analogy, it doesn't really matter whether it's possible that miracles exist. The choice was made because you chose known phenomena over unknown phenomena. You know that babies are produced by human beings. You know babies can be placed on doorstep by human beings. Even if you never saw that event directly, that would be the reasonable explanation. Why would you choose the unknown explanation? You've never seen undetectable Martians. You've never seen them produce anything. So therefore, it's not because they're impossible. It's because they're not known. That's why you choose the human explanation as the more reasonable one. But the next thing that you do in proper historical procedure is to identify the proper object of explanation. That's where Dr. Craig makes his fundamental blunder in history. Because he would like to have you believe that the facts are, you know, what he cataloged. Sure, you know, you ask an atheist, how do you explain the post-mortem appearance of Jesus? Well, he's won the debate. Of course, well, I don't know, how would you explain the post-mortem appearance of Jesus? That's not the fact. I come from a background in archaeology where we deal with artifacts, and we have to explain the origin of the artifact, the event that created the artifact. The artifact in history must always be something verified. You've got to start with a fact, something you can verify is there. In the case of the resurrection, what can we verify is there? Well, the object of explanation is not the resurrection, folks. It's the stories of the resurrection. That's the object of explanation. So once you see that the object of explanation are the stories of the resurrection, not the post-mortem appearances, you can see how his methodology fails. Because you can see the burial of Jesus is not a fact. The existence of a story of the burial of Jesus is the fact. The empty tomb, that's not a fact. The story of the empty tomb is the fact. That's what you're trying to explain. How did you get the story? The existence of post-mortem appearances, that's not a fact. We don't know that happened, but we know that there's a story of post-mortem appearances. That's what we're trying to explain. And the origin of the disciples' faith in the bodily resurrection, that's not a fact either. We don't know that the original disciples believed it or not. All he's telling you is that he believes the stories that the disciples believe. He believes the stories that there were post-mortem appearances. He's just basically believing the say-so of these gospel writers.